Welcome to a brand new episode of DisruptX, a virtual talk series conceptualized by Misonika. Like we always say, we want our audience to be part of the dialogue too. So please send us your thoughts, questions, and feedbacks on our LinkedIn page. The handle is DisruptX by Misonika. Getting into today's topic, which is going to be all about the future of food tech, a market that's estimated to be valued at $342 billion by 2027, rising at a cumulative annual growth rate of 6%. Yes, we all know that food-related conversations have dominated podiums and social media on the sidelines of Gulf Food, one of the UAE's major food events. We too are very keen to understand the trends, shifts, and developments that are reshaping the food industry. But before that, starting with a burning question, by 2050, there will be 10 billion people living on this earth. If today's agriculture is unable to meet the food needs, then what will shape and inspire a new food future? Well, of course, amid a lot of challenges and turbulence, there's still a lot of optimism about the resilience of the food tech landscape that will continue to open up new doors and opportunities. One of the first things that come to mind is the kind of growth that the agri-tech industry has seen in 2021 and set to see in 2022. In terms of revenue, the global agri-tech market was valued at $17,443 million in 2019 and is projected to reach $41,173 million by 2027. An industry that is expected to grow at a CAGR of 12.1% during the forecast period. Turning to the region, where food consumption in the GCC is expected to grow at a CAGR of 2.3% to reach 52.4 million metric tons in 2025 from 46.8 million metric tons in 2020. Now, historically, the GCC countries have been reliant on food import. But as the pandemic exposed vulnerability of the region to global supply chain disruptions, regional governments have taken steps to enhance food security through supply chain diversification and domestic production. From indoor vertical farm facilities, aquaponics, hydroponics, to high-tech greenhouse complexes, stimulated food production systems and advanced farm tech research have become part of the region's plan to revamp the agriculture sector, with Saudi Arabia and the UAE leading the way. Let's look at some examples now. The Abu Dhabi Investment Authority has invested more than $100 million in agri-tech companies as part of the National Food Security Strategy. Over to the UAE-based Badia Farms, which is the first company that introduced indoor vertical farming in the GCC, using hydroponics to sustainably produce fresh fruits and vegetables without sunlight, soil, or pesticides, while recycling up to 90% of the water. Over to Kuwait. In April, Kuwait's Wafra International Investment Company invested $100 million in UAE-based Pure Harvest farms. In September that year, Pure Harvest Smart Farms announced plans to invest over $30 million to build a dedicated high-tech farm producing locally grown fresh fruits and vegetables for Kuwaiti supermarket, the Sultan Center. In August 2020, a joint venture between Kuwait's NOx management and a German company opened the first commercial indoor vertical farm in the country. Over to Saudi Arabia. KSA-based agtech startup Red Sea Farms, after attracting $10 million in venture capital from Saudi Arabia and the UAE, is now expanding into the US through its new agriculture technology that tackles food security problems by helping countries to grow crops in areas with scarce water resources. Over to Qatar, where Finnish agri-tech company iFarm has entered a multi-year partnership with Sadara Partners to bring next-generation sustainable vertical farming to Qatar. The partnership aims to optimize the growing of leafy vegetables, strawberries, and edible flowers, among others. That's certainly not all. A significant development in the region is the recently launched foodtech valley in Dubai that seeks to triple the UAE's food production. The foodtech valley will be home to 4 main clusters: agricultural technology and engineering, a food innovation center, R&D facilities, and an advanced smart food logistics hub. In addition, the International Center of Biosaline Agriculture, or ICBA, is transplanting and growing salt-loving superfoods to expand food diversity in the region. The work of ICBA is part of a global effort to find alternate ways to produce food, with total food demand expected to increase between 59% and 98% by 2050. Egypt, too, is investing $2.1 billion in food security projects. Moving over to another interesting topic, meatless meats. The global health and wellness foods market is expected to reach $1.1 trillion by 2027. US retail sales of plant-based foods continued to increase by double digits in 2020, growing 27% and bringing the total plant-based market value to $7 billion. Unsurprisingly, thus, there is interest in meatless meat as the value of plant-based meat hit $1.4 billion in 2020, with sales growing 45%, up from $962 million in 2019. However, it's important to note that 60% of plant-based consumers are now looking to purchase less processed alternatives. Time to tackle a serious issue of food wastage. Globally, several creative solutions are emerging to tackle the serious issue of food wastage. A great example is the food rescue company Gooder that uses proprietary technology and data to match food surplus to those in need. Over to edible packaging. Yes, now you can actually eat your yogurt or ice cream cups. The market for edible packaging is growing at nearly 5% CAGR, estimated to touch $2 billion by 2030. A step in the right direction as food companies look to green their supply chains by adopting biodegradable and compostable packaging solutions. Ending this segment with a wonderful examples. From the UAE, of course, where the residents of the sustainable city collected over 630 kg of food scrap and 30 kg of sawdust to be converted into compost and soil. This was a pilot project by the Waste Lab that specializes in making compost from food scrap. That was a lot of data and developments to take in. But now it's time for some impactful stories from the region and the global food landscape. Today, we have with us 4 wonderful speakers who will talk about the developments not only from their businesses, but also how that impacts the overall food landscape. Starting with F&B industry veteran Tapan Vaidya, who comes with more than 36 years of experience in the Middle East and India. Now, the CEO of PJP Investments Group that owns and operates Papa John's Pizza in the UAE and Saudi Arabia. Over to serial entrepreneur Ian Ohan, the founder and CEO of Crush Brands, that recently completed a decade in the region and launched an app called Local that seeks to support fellow food entrepreneurs. Moving over to Henry Gordon Smith, the founder and CEO of Agritecture, a global advisory firm that specializes in urban and controlled environment agriculture. And finally, Adi Taflia, head of AI and algorithm for Tevel, a company that's on a mission to transform manual fruit picking with its technology solutions. A very warm welcome to all our speakers. Thank you for joining us. And now diving straight into the conversations. Allow me to start with you, Ian. And every time I have a conversation with you, I'm somewhat taken back to our first conversation, if you remember, that happened at a cafe in the Dubai Mall. At that time, you were still sort of developing the packaging for Freedom Pizza, and you showed me that little token book that you were developing as a concept, as a paid-forward concept, I still remember. From that time onwards, you have owned your proprietary technology platform that over the years have not only enabled your own brands, but also helped a lot of other brands to scale up. Could you please start with how that technology platform has helped your brands and other brands? Ian, may I request you to unmute yourself, please?
My apologies, sorry.
No problem.
I was saying, what you rightfully said started as an app really for online ordering for Freedom Pizza, where we owned our entire value chain. So we owned the technology platform, we owned the brand at that time, Freedom Pizza, that we operated, and we also owned the last mile logistics, so our own delivery fleet. And so what we've done now is we've actually created a new app called Local.ae, which is an online aggregation for all of our brands. And what we're doing is we're applying this entire ecosystem to allow foodpreneurs to work with us as equity partners to have a highly curated experience for customers that avoids a third-party delivery ecosystem, so we can ensure that we have quality, great delivery. We have our own professional delivery drivers. And we're seeking to reduce the cost of delivery, reduce the cost of technology and some of the barriers that to entry into the market that didn't exist possibly 10 years ago, and share that technology and that platform to let some of the most innovative foodpreneurs in the region, all local, thrive alongside of us, and also provide customers with a very unique, highly curated experience of, so let's say, 20 or so brands in each locale.
Absolutely, and that's something which also sort of helped a lot of foodpreneurs during the pandemic, if I'm not mistaken, the platform itself.
Well, the platform itself, we actually launched in November, but yeah, so we had several brands that we were, of our own brands that we had acquired and supported during the pandemic. But the Locale now is just starting to flourish, and I think what you'll see in the next 3 to 4 months, we'll have about 20 really amazing brands, all backed by really awesome foodpreneurs. So high quality, innovative foodpreneurs that have something to say and need a nice place like Locale, which is really an ecosystem that allows them to be very profitable in a world where there's a lot of people trying to interject fees into the value chain that we don't care for, and we want to really focus for us and for them on making money on food, not on technology or delivery or advertising.
Sure. Ian, Crush Brands also happens to be one of those very first players, early players that moved into the cloud kitchen concept, a concept that is a market that is growing globally. And the GCC region happens to be a hotbed as well. We have over 400 brands in the UAE alone operating out of more than 80 locations. Could you please tell us the benefits of having a full stack cloud kitchen? And despite the model being very much self-reliant, what are some of the obstacles that you see?
Well, I think, when we talk about a full stack ecosystem, it's sort of the areas that I described. Firstly, the benefits let's back up a little bit. For us, cloud kitchens aren't really necessarily a business in and of themselves. It's really a format in similar ways to, we started, I guess, with in restaurant dining, then we had drive-through, then we had delivery. So multi-kitchen operations for us is another mode of serving the customer. We don't see it as a business in and of itself. It's but what you do get with multi-kitchen operations are real estate efficiencies, so we can generate higher revenue and profit per square foot. We also get, of course, operating efficiencies, and again, for the same reasons, we can have reduced staff operating multiple brands in a much smaller location. And we also can assure quality. And in terms of full stack for us is everything from our own online marketplace, which is locale.ae, where customers can send orders down. They can actually order one item from every single brand, which allows them to be funneled into these multi-kitchens and then delivered with our own proprietary fleet. So in doing that, we don't pay fees to anyone outside of our value chain. And that allows us to focus and align our interests with all the foodpreneurs in our platform to make sure that we generate a high profit margin for the brands, and then ultimately for Locale and as an aggregate. So the challenges of multi-kitchen, of course, is the complexity, and it's really having a fully integrated technology stack that goes from online ordering right into the kitchen and allows us to manage the kitchen activities in real time and simultaneously. So I think the main challenge with operating particularly large footprint multi-kitchens, which we're doing, is really the complexity of managing all those moving parts and reaching the quality standards that we have for ourselves, both in terms of speed, but of course the quality of the products, and not just when it leaves the kitchen, but when it arrives at the customer's door.
Absolutely. And going forward, what are those regional food tech developments that excite you a lot? Ones that are directed towards promoting food security, reducing food wastage, and also enabling customers to eat sustainably and healthily?
I think, if you look at our industry, and we do a lot of delivery, I think the things that excite me the most is really sustainable food packaging. And we're spending a lot of time and energy trying to create the most sustainable packaging solution across all of our brands. And the challenge, of course, is it's not just about having sustainable packaging, but it's about making sure there's actually places for that packaging to be recycled and reused. So it's about generating that entire value chain. There's no point in importing recycled products, because I think you're adding to the solution. We'd rather have a self-enclosed value chain within that area. And I think the second area, you made reference to it in your opening remarks, was really the evolution of plant-based eating. And I think we're going to continue to see that. We actually bought we acquired a vegan company in 2018 that produces all vegan goods. We believe it's not just a trend in eating, but it's a paradigm shift in the way people eat, and we think it'll be obviously contribute to a much more sustainable part of our food chain. And it's not all about being purely vegan. It's about just people eating in general more plant-based foods that are better for the environment, more sustainable, and arguably in a lot of cases better for you.
Yeah, and going back to that point where consumers are showing very specific signs that they would prefer less processed plant-based food. Do you see that in the region as well?
100%. I think we call it vegan junk food. So there is such a thing, and and I think like any other type of food, there's good, better quality and worse quality, and we definitely see a trend towards more even dare I say sort of home cooked type vegan foods, and we're working with a number of really up and coming pure vegan chefs that make food that you don't really have to be a vegan or solely a plant-based eater to really enjoy. And I think the idea that vegan, you have to give up something to be have more of a plant-based diet, I think those days are gone now. And I think there's been such advancements. We're actually not only looking for really nice plant-based foods and menu items, but really exciting ones that even non-plant-based eaters can get excited about.
That really sounds exciting. Thank you so much, Ian. And by the way, I love your background, particularly the cycle and the helmet.
It does come off the wall once in a while, so it's not just for show.
Lovely background. Thank you, Ian. And moving over to Tapan now. I remember our conversation right in the middle of the pandemic, Tapan. And we discussed how even the restaurant business is undergoing massive digital transformation. And since then, you've undertaken several initiatives. And today, I would really, like to understand, as the restaurant industry has embraced technology tools for increased efficiency, deliver great experiences, and even to pivot, what kind of initiatives have you undertaken within your business? And importantly, how do you see, or what's your vision for the restaurant of the future?
Okay, thank you for having me, firstly.
It's always a pleasure, Tapan.
Thank you. So, yes, we've done a lot in the last 2 years, and a number of them thanks to the pandemic. But to understand tech and how tech has played a part in the restaurant industry, let's go back to the time when I landed here in the region in the late 80s and see. So tech has always supported restaurant industry in different shape and form. We had the Casio cash registers in late 80s and early 90s in Pizza Hut, where I was at that time. And we all had thought this machine has completely revolutionized how cash is collected and sales are calculated. Customers come up to the machine, take their orders by pressing buttons. At the same time, the machine is calculating the total, and you tell the customer the total. The customer gives you, say, 100 dirhams versus the amount of 45. And you press 100 and ping, the ring sounds, the drawer magically opens, and the machine tells you to give back 55 dirhams. So that was huge back in the day. Then in the 90s, I was with Taco Bell, and Taco Bell had a revolutionary kitchen management system. The whole kitchen worked like Henry Ford's assembly line, where someone would pick up a burrito, put the meat and beans, pass it on to another one on the line. That guy would put all the chilled things like sour cream, lettuce, cheese, pass it on to the next guy on the line, who will wrap it all up, put it in a wrapper, and then pass it on to the expediter, who will then collect all the items in the order and dispatch either in a tray for a dining customer or in a paper bag for a takeaway customer. And all of this was recorded on computer monitors placed directly above each guy. So each guy would bump off the order that appeared in his screen. So a timestamp was collected. So at the end of the day, the manager could actually see which station, which person took least amount of time. But the target was from the time order is taken to the time the customer is served should not exceed more than 120 seconds. So that's how technology was. Then in 2000s, delivery became somewhat mainstream, nowhere near what it is today, but it really started picking up and companies started thinking of having call centers. So the call centers technology that came into play. I remember our first call center and how they used to manage, and we would get a report at the end of every day, average time taken per order by a call agent, and we had to drive that time down, and finally through lots of training, etc., we controlled that to under 110 seconds. So that was big. So technology has always played a part in the restaurant industry, and especially with the pandemic having hit and restaurant suddenly deciding now we need all the digital assets. We were fortunate in that sense. We already had our app, site, etc. in play. So we could quickly capitalize on during the lockdown and after that. We started frequent use of all the tools, IT tools available, and we've not looked back since. As soon as the lockdown, the true lockdown ended, which was probably around July, August of 2020. After that, we've just not looked back. We've kept using all our tools, and we've kept opening more and more restaurants and deployed everything possible in all locations. Today we are at 66 restaurants with another 15 under construction.
That's amazing. And I must mention here, as a customer now, that the Papa points always elate us. I must say that. But going back to that one question, Tapan, what do you envision as the restaurant of the future?
I think, like we've seen, this evolution will continue. So today, I would say roughly 80% of all functions in the restaurant are supported by tech. I think this is only going to increase. And while I don't believe we will ever achieve 100% tech support in every function, we will still need constant and regular human intervention with number of tasks. But I think this will only increase, and we'll probably one day see greater than 90% involvement of IT, of tech in all the tasks that are completed in a restaurant.
I'm so glad you said that because I really had that question in mind. I'm ever keen to sort of understand how technology is actually enabling the human capital within different industries. If you could share your perspective on how it's enabling people from the food service industry.
Oh, tech is a great enabler, no question. And it does it in so many different ways. Let me give you some examples of how it is enabling our team members today in Papa John's in UAE. So first of all our restaurant managers and area managers are on Microsoft Teams. So they are in regular touch. An area manager typically would have anything from 5 to 8 restaurants in his cluster, but he does not have to visit each in order to have a meeting with his restaurant manager. That's one. The other is we use this great tool called Zenput. We use that for all our checklists. We use that to conduct our audits. And this is the best way of conducting an in-restaurant audit to check if standards are being met or not. So how this happens is you can use your mobile phone to conduct this audit, and you cannot deceive anyone here. You've got to take images using your phone, real-time images of the product you're auditing, or you have to use a Bluetooth thermometer to check the temperature of the product. And that Bluetooth temperature of the thermometer is connected to your phone. So temperature recordings are taken directly by the phone. You cannot doctor them. So, this is how we use technology. This is how our teams are seriously enabled. We also use Zoho People. This app connects every team member. So we have all the 600 employees who work. All of them are on this app, and all of them are connected. And this connection, imagine a driver who's driving in Ras Al Khaimah, or a back of the house crew who's in Abu Dhabi. He knows he can send a direct message to me via Zoho People app and ask a question, and he will get an answer the same day, if not same hour. So the tech is really enabling everyone in so many different ways, and increasing their productivity, helping them analyze data, and making sure that all degree of decision making is not only faster, but it's really effective and productive.
That's really fascinating. Thank you for sharing these details, Tapan. After people, I would also like to touch upon inventory management and what's happening there. How is that sector being enabled by technology, especially now that forecasting, tracking, monitoring, planning of inventory has become so crucial?
It has become indeed very, very crucial, especially in these times, because globally supply chain issues are just getting very, very difficult. So what we do is we have a comprehensive inventory module where everything that enters the restaurant is entered in the IT system, the module. So the computer system always knows what is available in the restaurant in terms of ingredients. As soon as a sale is generated in the system, in the POS, the system knows which item is sold and therefore which ingredients are consumed. So at any given point in time, if you can take a closing count, existing inventory of ingredients in the restaurant entered in the system can tell you the what should be your actual consumption versus what you know is your ideal consumption. So, and this system also therefore tracks consumption and creates a forecast of what you will need on which day, and for say a period of 3 months what will you need, or period of 2 months what will you need. So if you're importing something from the US, you project your consumptions for the next 3 months and place your order. And that's how we manage our inventory. Now that said, we always used to carry a buffer inventory of 1 month, which means that before you run out, your next order, import order should come into your warehouses at least 1 month before you run out of the product. That unfortunately we've had no alternative, thanks to the global supply chain issues, to expand this buffer inventory now to 3 months. That's, it takes finances. Fortunately, we are able to do that. And so we've actually expanded the buffer inventory to 3 months. So now we must get everything in our warehouse 3 months before we actually run out. So, but that's how it is. I don't think global supply chain issues are going to go away any soon. I think we're looking at another year and a half of such problems.
And therein also the heightened need for more and more accuracy in forecasting and predicting.
Yes, absolutely. And see, the thing is, in our business, we run so many LTOs, limited time offers, new items, promotions. And when you introduce a new item, obviously it's going to cannibalize some of the existing ones. So the inventory system you use has got to have an algorithm built in to predict properly, to account for all these new promotions and project extra or under. So that's very important. And we have a good system and it's helped us so far so good.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Tapan. And after those brilliant insights from our first two speakers, before moving on to our next two speakers, we'll take a short break and be back in just a minute. Welcome back, and we're still talking about the future of food tech. A very warm welcome to you, Henry. Thank you for joining us today. Let's start with how agri-texture is making a real difference in the ag tech space. If you could say a few words, please.
Sure. Thank you for having me. Agritecture is a global services and software company. We started 10 years ago, and we basically are on a mission to empower and accelerate smart agriculture around the world. And this tends to be greenhouses and vertical farms and lots of urban agriculture projects. And we do this by providing the data necessary to plan these projects more effectively. So we provide feasibility studies on the economics. We design the layouts of the facilities and the engineering of the facilities. And we also work with other stakeholders across the sector, including consulting governments on policy planning. The City of Dallas is one of our clients right now. We've also worked with the City of Atlanta, the City of Auckland, New Zealand, and the Government of Qatar. We also provide services to investors. As you can imagine, there's a lot of excitement about this sector, but very little available data. So as a third party, we provide strategic planning for investors and due diligence. We also provide a lot of strategic planning and market guidance to large corporates. So large beverage companies, large food companies. IKEA is one of our clients that we've helped with their global strategy for urban agriculture and vertical farming. We also work with utility companies. Now, the software side of our business is a way that we're trying to scale up our impact and make it even easier and faster. So 10 times faster and 10 times cheaper to get the basic data about this exciting new trend of vertical farming and greenhouses. And so using our software, you can estimate the CapEx and OpEx and yield and jobs of any greenhouse or vertical farm on Earth. And this is very useful for all kinds of audiences, including the client types I mentioned already. And it's a really incredible platform that sort of gamifies the process of developing your business plan and determining feasibility. And then after that, you can shop for financing options and even suppliers that have been pre-vetted to help you build and implement the facilities. So as you can hear, we're all about bringing agriculture closer to the consumer and into cities and helping all of the various stakeholders do that. So we're a platform and an enabling technology for the sector.
You're literally catalyzing developments in the ag tech sector, I must say.
It's my passion.
Clearly visible, Henry. And on that note, one of your researchers suggests that 74 indoor vertical farms were launched in 2020 alone. And obviously, the prospects are vast. The growth prospects are amazing for this sector. But could you point out some of the challenges in upscaling indoor vertical farming?
Yeah, so indoor vertical farming, which you showed in the introduction, is very exciting. You can grow using less land, less space, and save a lot of water. But there's also a lot of unknowns about it, and a lot of hype and a lot of greenwashing. So on an annual basis, we run a census of controlled environment agriculture operators. That means greenhouses and vertical farms around the world, and they highlight things about what stage of their business they're at, and that's where that data point comes from. Now, there's a whole other set of data in those census reports that you can find at agritecture.com/census that are very valuable for anyone looking at the sector. Some of the problems noticed in those or identified in those reports really relate again to planning. 73% of respondents said if they could go back in time, they would have chosen a different crop and a different technology for their farming operations. So that just shows you how little knowledge there is about how these systems work. We also found that 49% of operators had 0 years of agricultural experience before starting their operations. Another signal that we really need to enable and support and educate all of this excitement and innovation in the space. With that said, as you mentioned with some of the market numbers, there is a lot of interest in the space, a lot of investment coming in. I've been in this sector for about 10 years now. And, in the early years, there really wasn't that much investment in that many operations, right? But in the past year, there's been almost $2 billion put into the sector overall. So it's really accelerating at a rapid pace. Now, that acceleration is extremely exciting, but also very problematic, because what's happening is a lot of the companies are being dishonest about their performance. They're hyping up the reality of these, or they're hyping up the potential of these kinds of operations to lure in different investors. And there's looming failures on the horizon as a result of that, as the industry will go through a stage of correction. Now, we're trying to balance that by providing more data through our software, through our reports, and even through our sustainability initiatives. For example, just today, we published a report on sustainability communications in CEA. How do you avoid greenwashing? Because it's so easy to say, this is the future of agriculture, less land, less water. But the fact is that the actual sustainability impact is very context specific and regional specific. And so we think it's important that we don't just talk in hyperbole and refer to vertical farming or greenhouses as a sort of panacea to our food security challenges. But instead, we take a step back and consider the full landscape of models for producing food to solve our agricultural challenges in the future, and understand that vertical farming and greenhouses, while very exciting, are only a small part of the nutrition, calories, and food security needs that we have.
Absolutely. I'm really glad that you brought up greenwashing, because a lot also depends on how ethically things are done.
Well, I think that across agriculture, we have many problems with inequality and equity. The pandemic definitely showed us just how much migrant labor is behind our food, and it was one of the reasons why we had a lot of supply chain issues. Certainly around the world, there's a lot of exploitation issues with agriculture. I will say that when it comes to greenhouse and vertical farms, that tends to be less common than in field agriculture and in other parts of the world where there's less transparency. And that's because these farms tend to have investors that do have some idea of what's happening on the farm and interest in ESG impact. And they also tend to be closer to the cities where there are more requirements around workforce and equality in the workforce.
Sure. And on that note, I would like to move over to meatless meats and how interest has already sort of peaked. So do you see an upcoming development that will soon become visible therein?
Look, I think the idea of producing other kinds of protein or producing the flavor and taste of meat without the negative impacts of conventional industrial meat production is very exciting. I don't think it's the only solution to the problem, and I think it's actually extremely hyped up as well. You talked earlier that sales are on the rise. I actually see different data, especially in a recent Financial Times article that I was quoted in. In fact, sales are declining for plant-based meats in the US and the United Kingdom. And we can also see this from the Beyond Meat stock that has dramatically dropped. So, investors are seeing that the appetite from consumers to eat plant-based meats has actually declined, and there's a lot of theories about that. Some say that, well, it's not necessarily affordable yet, it's more expensive. That's one of the major drivers, and that could change in the future. I suspect that will. But the other is that often consumers are going to try something new or a couple times as a novelty, but they're probably going to go back to their original habits. Changing consumption behavior is extremely difficult, takes a long time, a lot of marketing, and doesn't happen quickly. So I think that the promise of plant-based meats in the short term has been definitely overhyped, and we're going into a trough of disillusionment for that sector, just as we are with vertical farming. But in the long term, both of these methods of production and both of these ways of providing alternatives to the market for production and to do things in a more land efficient and overall, hopefully more efficient way in the long term, it's here to stay. But I remain cautious about both sectors and try to be as honest and responsible as possible.
Thank you so much also for telling us about that correction. Really appreciate
My pleasure.
that. Thank you. And over to Adi to understand some ground realities now. Welcome and waiting very patiently, Adi. Thank you for that. It's a pleasure. And I'd really like to start with what Tevel does and your mission, of course, to transform manual fruit harvesting, picking.
Yeah, so a few words about Tevel. We are, in fact, a startup company that we are running about 5 years. We are developing a robotic fruit harvester that is based on a flying robot. It's something like a drone, which is tethered to a ground station, and it picks in the orchards. Now we are focusing on apples and stone fruits. This is our mission right now. This platform can do other things later, other tasks in the field. The good thing about the robotic solution is, first of all, it solves a big problem of labor shortage that is in few countries in the world, and the robot can work day and night, can work in every environment condition, when it's hot, when it's cold. And eventually we think that using it, we can also increase the yield of the farmer, because during the picking, we are collecting a lot of data to the farmer about the state of the trees. We can know how much fruit is on every tree, what is the ripeness level, what is the weight of the fruits. We can give a lot of information to the farmer during using our data that we collect while picking.
And I would have asked you this question, of course. We see that farmers are definitely turning to automated solutions. But along with the robots, AI, or any other tech pieces, how are these actually complementing human knowledge and capabilities?
So first of all, I would say that from a robotic point of view, human is a good robot. It's very hard to compete with the human, with its speed, with its ability to pick fruits in the thick foliage. It's not very easy, but it has some disadvantages. I would say it still has some things that we can do better. For example, we can work in a consistent way. We can work day and night. We can work in every environment condition, and moreover, the technology today, for example, in the image processing or image analysis, when we see a fruit, we know what its size. The estimation is very precise, while a human after a few hours of working is not estimating this so good, and then we can really pick the best fruits for the farmer. So first of all, as I say, we come into to solve a problem. So the biggest problem is that there is not enough working hands today in the farms. And if you even find a working hand, so you cannot find an experienced one. You won't see the same worker year after year, but if you have a system that works in your field year after year, it will improve itself, this first of all. And the second, it will give you in a time perspective, the information about your farm state. You can know if a certain area in your field is going better or worse in the yield. You can know a lot of information from season to season, and then with this information you can improve what is needed to be improved.
Sure. And now, generally speaking, we are all aware that food security related conversations are high on the global agenda. So in this situation, how do you think technology will facilitate in creating sustainable food sources?
So there are a few reasons of waste of food. As I said before, today there's sometimes food is left on the trees because there is nobody to pick it. So this is, if we introduce technology into farms, there will be more food. Food will not be left on the trees eventually. Second thing is vegetation diseases and pests, and in this aspect, the technology can improve early detection of diseases and pests in the field, and also to give a precise treatment. Today we are spraying all around, use many chemicals in the farms. Technology, drones and other things, even satellites, can give you precise information where you have to spray, where you have to give a treatment, or even watering. Maybe a field has less water than it needs or more. It all can be very precisely found by looking at satellite images or a drone that takes care of the field. That's today also AI can improve things like developing new strains of vegetation that are more durable to environment conditions. So this can enhance or improve the new brand, new strain development.
Thank you so much, Adi. And now I will turn to all our speakers for one last question. What is that tech-driven transformation over the next 12 to 18 months that you see will redefine and positively impact the food landscape? Well, starting with you, Tapan, this time.
Right. What is that big tech? So many things are in the pipeline, but I would, if a platform were created, and there are some platforms already available, but they all have some limitations or the other. But if a platform came around that were to seamlessly ensure orders coming into restaurants from all possible sources, may these sources be a call center, a website, app, or just a phone call coming into the restaurant, or from various aggregator platforms. I know Ian does not believe in using them, but all aggregator platforms, all the orders that come into the restaurant, if they seamlessly get into the restaurant POS, that I think would be a big breakthrough.
Thank you, Tapan. Over to you, Ian.
Well, thank you. And I actually sort of piggyback on what Tapan says, even with the aggregators. So, but I think for me, what's exciting in our space is the ability to, similar to Tapan's ideas, is the ability to have an omni-channel presence. So it's the idea of technology connecting not just delivery, but in restaurant dining, digital vending machines. Basically all parts of the consumer experience, because for us, and that's actually what we're developing, because we want to be where consumers are and have one sort of seamless tech solution that allows us to connect with customers and customers to easily connect across multiple platforms. So for me, it's about technology following into the background to allow customers to interact in a seamless way.
Thank you so much, Ian. Can we hear your views, Henry?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think there's a lot of exciting technologies. I think in the short term, it's hard to say which one is going to make the biggest difference. But what I can say is that what we're doing in Agritecture as we finish our seed round is completing the next stages of our software. So we're making the seamless interaction between planning your farm and the possibilities there, and then finding the right suppliers and financing solutions to implement them to really get more farms built. We really feel like the pandemic is just a signal of the larger wave of climate change that's coming. And we have such urgency to act. And the legacy that I want to leave and that my team wants to leave behind is that we've created a data-driven way for us to adapt to climate change by democratizing the access to the basic data about how these farms perform. So I'm really looking forward to those new features and how we integrate AI to optimize the software to help people plan better and faster.
Absolutely. Thank you. And over to you, Adi.
So it's much like Henry said, I think that the next revolution is a data revolution. When technology comes into the agriculture, whatever it does, it will collect data, and this data will eventually improve more and more the agriculture, the processes that farmers are doing the work, and then eventually this will increase the yield, and also from economical point of view, makes it's all this business to be profitable.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more. Thank you so much, Adi. And thus we wrap yet another insightful episode that wouldn't have been possible without the support of our team, spearheaded by Upasana Barua. Thank you so much to each of our speakers for sparing time and sharing such wonderful insights with us on the show today. Do not miss our episode in March, because we're going to be touching upon artificial intelligence and its applications in various industries. Thank you so much for joining us today, and look out for our March episode. See you then.